I'm going to share with you today a little bit about how I got started, and you know, I don't know anybody's level, obviously, because I've never met anybody. So you know, please forgive anything that seems, you know, if you're far beyond what I'm saying, or you know, whatever. But a little bit about my background, as Jake was saying, I'm from New Orleans. I moved out here about 12 to 13 years ago, and you know, I had a bachelor's in history from LSU. So my favorite kind of movies are historical pictures. So, you know, Braveheart, Glory, Titanic, you know. Unfortunately, those are also the most expensive. So it's not anything you're going to jump right into. I did apply to USC my first year here, and I got turned down. It's a really competitive master's program to get in for production and stuff. And I had my first lesson, I guess you could say, in Hollywood when you, several years later, I reapplied, but in that interim, I had interned for James Cameron, Oliver Stone, Roger Corman, George Lucas, a bunch of my favorite film directors. And I got letters of reference, you know, from all of the various companies. When you apply to USC Film School for the master's program, you're asked to submit samples of your writing, mission statements, goals, things like that. I had it all archived in a file. I just pulled out the same stuff, resubmitted, added the letters of recommendation. I got in the second time. So nothing really changed in the applicant's file except for the letters, and it's it kind of just shows you it's a business. You know, it's all about. Several of those people give top dollar to USC, and especially if anybody applied to USC and had a letter of recommendation from Lucasfilm, you're pretty much a guarantee because they gave like $600 million like in the last, I think, fiscal 2 years. Anyway, that being said, I got out of finished the program. It's about 3.5 years. Got out, jumped onto a friend of mine had a $500,000. He wanted to produce like an American Pie type movie. So he asked me to take over. Actually, while I was at USC, just to back up a second, while I was at USC one summer, I wrote, directed, and produced my first film. Does anybody know who Kevin Smith is? The way he did Clerks. That's sort of how I did Bill the Intern, which was a comedy about interning in Hollywood. It's like I think of it as sort of like a Swimming with Sharks meets Office Space. Think of it that way. It's on Netflix. You can get it there. But we did that like 18 days shooting on Super 16. $25,000, just charged it all the credit cards. When I was done, I was like, okay, I'm going to submit to Sundance. I didn't get in. I was like, shit, now what? I owed a lot of money on credit cards. So I ended up making 3,000 DVDs and selling them door to door, and I made like $45,000 selling the movie. I sold like 2,200 DVDs.
Tell them about that. You went door to door?
Yeah, it was like, I basically found a DVD author. He created professional-looking menus, and I found a guy in Colorado who replicated DVDs cheap. So we replicated 3,000 DVDs. I pretty much figured every city I knew, friends or family, that I could stay for free, and I went there. I went to New York and Philadelphia, and Memphis, and of course New Orleans, Los Angeles, just all these places. I was selling my movie, and I met one guy who. In New Orleans, who wrote for the New Orleans Times-Picayune, and he wrote an article on me, and that was my big PR for the film. But we, I managed to get it into like 30 video stores, independent ones. I got it on Netflix. The main thing was I paid off the credit cards and was able to kind of get free of that and move on to the next one.
How did you get them in independent stores? You just said
just basically going in, and we're kind of moving out of that phase of independent video stores, but there still are some available, and I think one here was like Rocket Video. I just went and talked to the manager, and he's like, "Sure, that's cool." And
you just put it on the shelf, and that was it.
Yeah, I mean, pretty much for the exposure, I would be like, just willing to, give it to them. I wasn't selling them a DVD. I just, I like the idea, and the same thing with Netflix. Netflix will take indie films if you, they're not going to buy. You can't even make on a big film, a studio film. They don't make anything except like maybe a $20,000 licensing fee for a 2-year time frame. So you're definitely not with the internet going to make your money back on your film, but it's good exposure. I did that, and there was a guy, as I was finishing USC film school, he knew that I had done that, and so he had $500,000, and he's like, well, you know, I like how you stretched your $25,000. Can you do that with my, you know, $500,000? I took his film on, I did it, and now I'm not, you know, he was trying to hit that American Pie tone, and it fell a little short of that, but it was a good experience because, you know, you're a couple months out of film school, and pretty much you take whatever you can to just get on-set experience. And so I did that, and then, you know, there was a point where, you know, when you're looking for things, a lot of times you don't find them. When you're not looking for things, they'll fall into your lap. And that's sort of how I look at the Stan Lee documentary. I had a friend who was buddies with Stan. I was able to meet Stan, and, you know, he's 88 at this point. He's been asked several times during his career, you know, hey, why don't we do a doc on your life? You know, it's pretty impressive. You know, he was never really at the point that he wanted to do a biography documentary. And at the point I came along, he said, you know, okay, I'm open to it now. Let's jump into it. Nobody on our team felt it or had any idea it was going to take as long as it did, but we're now like 4.5 years later, we're finished. I'm going to show you the 3-minute opening teaser, I guess you could say. But we're you know, at a place where we're shopping it right now, trying to get the best distribution offer. We have an offer from several places around town right now, and it's just kind of trying to figure out which one is the best to get it out there. But, you know, 90% of docs go straight to DVD. So what we've, you know, been pushing for is the idea of going theatrical, because that's you know, that would be the ultimate, because it'll boost your DVD and your international value. So anyway, so I figure, you know, I'm not really one to talk about acting, but I can, you know, certainly share with you my experience. I'll show you this, and then just tell you a little bit more about it, and take questions, and go from there. Awesome. All right, lights.
This is an experiment for sure.
Yeah.
It's going to be really loud.
The 2008 National Medal of Arts to Stan Lee for his groundbreaking work as one of America's most prolific storytellers, recreating the American comic book. His complex plots and humane superheroes celebrate courage, honesty, and the importance of helping the less fortunate.
The opening Tuesday. I can tell you how to make an indie doc, but you know, there's really no acting obviously involved in documentary. But it was fun working with the actors. You know, they all have you know, their various entourage they show up with, and some of them are friendlier than others. And I think one of the most interesting experiences, we were you know, shooting with at a PR junket for that's how, I think it was for Spider-Man 2. That's how we got Tobey Maguire, and you know, he's calm, his demeanor is very laid back. He doesn't really talk much until the cameras start rolling, but he's got like his publicist there to kind of, you know, she's paid to handle all the people, and handle them she did. She's her name is Annette Wolf, and she's sort of a wolf because she, you know, we had actually set up the room in a typical way. Our typical way of shooting anybody, you know, was a 3-camera setup, kind of a medium close-up and a behind-the-scenes type thing in front of a green screen, and with a stills photographer kind of roaming. And you know, when you get to, I guess, a certain level, actors have to, you know, be concerned with all of the additional photographs that they didn't think, or that they don't want leaked on the internet or something. I don't know if you remember, but when they were shooting X-Men, there was some random photographs of what's his name, Hugh Jackman, that leaked on the internet that were kind of showed him like this at the end of the day under fluorescence, and just beat, you know, tired, like most people would be at the end of the day of shooting. They leaked on the internet and made kind of a negative tone, you know. And keep in mind, everything that Marvel had done up to that point had been not very well. You know, they did the television version of Spider-Man, which didn't do super well. They did, as far as movies, they did the David Hasselhoff version of Nick Fury. They did the Punisher with Dolph Lundgren. They did a lot of things that in the '80s that just didn't work. So they were putting everything into the X-Men, kind of banging on this has to work, and it is the turning point. It kind of opened the gateway, I guess, if you will, to the Marvel era of movies that we're in now. But anyway, as obviously when the movie came out, it was received well, and people loved it, and the internet buzz built up big. But that was like one example of why. So it's obvious, it makes you understand why they do it. But I remember she was sort of like a very militaristic and keeping certain people out of the room and cameras off that they didn't have, I guess, pre-clearance. And another behind-the-scenes story, which was sort of funny, but don't use it on the internet, was Nick Cage actually had he was one of our first interviews, and it was actually during the Ghost Rider time frame. So his hair was he had a jet weave, dyed black with sort of what do you call it? Strands.
Highlights.
Well, it was like his hair was who?
Cornrows?
Sort of.
Braided?
Yeah, braided, let's call it. And he, so apparently, like, I did all the legal work, which was something else that I had been introduced to on the Stanley doc. I had one of the other producers, Nikki, helped with some of it, but certainly I did the lion's share of it. So I one of the toughest guys to get clearance by was because we shot Nick Cage, and then 2 years later we finally got him to sign off. But it was in that 2 years we couldn't figure out why he wasn't signing off, and everybody else was, and it just came down to he didn't like his hair, That was it. And so his people called us and said, look, we're gonna have to reshoot, because we send them a quick time and they look at it and they're like, yeah, I don't like doing the hair look. And so we met him at the Casa Del Mar hotel in Santa Monica and did a reshoot there, and it was like,
Wasn't his hair long in this one?
well, in this one, it's longer than it was. It was like, if you remember what he looked like in National Treasure the second time around, that's sort of, and to be honest, Nikki was like, Nikki notices things. She's my co-producer, director on this, and she notices things like this, and she's like, she didn't even notice the difference, but it was important to him, so case closed,
Could you talk about, just before we wrap it up, our Q&A, could you talk about how persistent you've been, and also maybe anything for the actors and the similarity between getting a career as a director and an actor, just kind of in terms of if you were an actor, what you would have been doing, maybe, or no, just whatever you want to do, but just basically about your persistence, because you are amazingly persistent,
Yeah.
I mean, coming from here, LSU, with no money, basically, and working, getting up at 4 a.m. to get to a substitute teacher job, and now you've got,
How many of you guys have been here for more than 6 months? Well, yeah, okay, I guess, let me say one thing actually about that in regards to Stan. Sometimes you sit around and think, man, you got it tough, and you look at a guy like Stan Lee, who grew up absolutely broke in the Great Depression in Lower East Side, growing up in tenement houses, and he kind of grew from that and built the media empire, and it's certainly one of the lessons that taken, that you do all that research and look at this man, and he's like, persistence, getting kicked down is sort of part of the deal, and he just keeps getting back up, and it's nice for him to actually see a lot of these characters now really succeeding, and doing so well. More on a personal note with me, it's like it's looking at Bill the Intern. I broke even, and that's not even counting the labor of actually going door to door. For I think it was 400 and some days.
you just knock on random doors and say, do you want to buy my DVD?
Yeah, and I would have a laptop, and I would show them a scene and offer them it was a $10 DVD. So I would offer them a money-back guarantee.
Weren't they scared you just knocked on their door?
No, because I went into overall it was overall it was, I guess it could have been scared, but you look out your window and you see a guy holding a Mac laptop, which is $3,000. How scared can you be? But I was met with a lot of, I guess, nice people who just kind of supported the whole idea of indie filmmaking, and not really, not every film is going to get the big payoff. I mean, sort of like I don't know if you're familiar with Ed Burns, what he was able to succeed with on The Brothers McMullen, or what Kevin Smith got with Clerks, or even Robert Rodriguez with El Mariachi. I mean, all these guys, that's kind of their breakthrough film, but they all have the same story where they were pushing years and years before they got to that. And I look at guys like that and certainly find inspiration. And even with what I'm doing now. I think I've heard this slogan, you got to be in LA 10 years before you really start seeing payoffs. I don't know if that's true or not. It certainly comes down, obviously, to connections and knowing people, but even when the door is open, having something to, I guess, walk through the door with, And, the more things change, the more you kind of find yourself in the same boat, because, now that this is over, I'm actually, doing bonus materials for this, the DVD. There's about 20 hours that we're working on right now. But then you're looking for your next job, and where do you go from there, and blah, blah, blah. So that's kind of it in a nutshell.